Getting hot in here, Johnny, huh? Better get used to it.
Well, Johnny's back in action. He is just 3-bet Davidi Kitai, the EPT 8 Berlin champion, has just joined the feature table.
Kitai raising a little light, calling a little light. Weird 3-bet against an under-the-gun raise, too, right? With ace-5.
So we've already got a very unconventional line from both players here. Kitai's opening with Jack-10 off under the gun with only 40-some-odd blinds. Lodden's 3-betting with ace-5 off, clearly because these guys have got history and dynamic. And then Kitai calls. These are all decisions that you don't normally see made.
Right, and if these were two random guys, as we go into on the podcast, we might just blast them for it.
We'd destroy them.
Because this is so unconventional, and it's, on surface, it's bad. But we figured a few things out here. We think Lodden, with his small sizing of his 3-bet, he's trying to set up a 5-bet shove against Kitai pre-flop.
Yeah, these guys, when you make it to the end of this video, you'll see the way they look at each other and the way they talk to each other. They clearly have a lot of history and a lot of dynamic, and we both believe pretty strongly that Lodden is expecting, well, maybe not expecting, but hoping for a 4-bet from Kitai so he can shove and win this pot.
Because
that's what's going on.
With the way the sizing would go, Lodden would still have fold equity on his 5-bet.
Jack high flop. Kitai takes the lead. Johnny continues with a gut shot for 10,500.
Standard C-bet.
Kitai raises with top pair.
Less standard. Not a lot standard happening here so far. These guys must have a ton of history against each other or something. It's a pretty narrow range of worse hands that can call this raise. Johnny has one of those hands.
With just ace high for now, he calls.
So this raise from Kitai is not something that you would generally expect from a high-level player. To put it in layman's terms, he's usually only going to get called by better hands and fold out all the worse hands, which is something you really don't want to be doing. But something a little different is going on here. Kitai is one of the best in the world, and he knows exactly what type of player his opponent, Johnny Lodden, is.
Yeah, on this board specifically, Kitai's not really representing any kind of a value hand because there's no hand he's really supposed to have here that can raise for value, right? If he had an overpair to jacks, he would have moved in. If he had jacks, he would have already re-raised pre-flop. So he doesn't have a set of jacks. It's very unlikely he's got a set of threes or deuces, and 2-pair hands are basically impossible. So there's nothing he really has that's value that raises here, that a pro player raises another pro player on the EPT with.
Right, and usually you would assume if it's not a complete bluff, it's going to be a flush draw.
Right.
And that plays into why Johnny Lodden is calling here, we think, because he calls with the ace of diamonds. That removes the nut flush draw from Davidi Kitai's range.
Which means it probably removes ace highs from most of Kitai's range also, which he's much more likely to call on the flop rather than raise.
Yes, and if Kitai has a flush draw, it guarantees that Lodden's ahead. And Kitai does not have a pair and a flush draw because the jack is a diamond as well, so it's not like Kitai has Jack-10 of diamonds here.
So we think Kitai is raising to try and get it in, or just win the hand, or really to also induce Lodden to move in with a flush draw or something like that. And we think Lodden's calling this raise because he's calling most turn shoves by Kitai with his ace-5 off. It's really an interesting play.
Crazy stuff.
Board pairs on the turn. Johnny slows down, he checks.
And Davidi may not be able to bet this again. He'd want Lodden calling the flop with a 3.
He checks behind.
So Kitai's check back is a bit of a surprise. You would think that he's set it up so that he has 54k left, the pot has 72k. It's a good spot for a shove. He can sometimes maybe get called by worse hands. Even if he can't, it's okay because it's a big pot for his stack. It's a huge advancement in his stack. What we have discovered is that we think he's just playing it so that Lodden's going to bluff the river.
Yeah, he's trying to now rep a flush draw that feels like it doesn't have any fold equity. So he's checking behind, and he wants Lodden to bluff the river, I think.
That seems reasonable. And Lodden, by the way, as Jonathan mentioned quickly on the turn, we think is calling a shove on the turn here.
Yeah, even with ace-5 off.
Right.
Amazing.
The river is a 4. That is a straight for Lodden.
Well, la-di frickin' da. Johnny Lodden living in a van down by the river.
35,000.
Mandatory value bet. I think Davidi has played top pair so bizarrely that he kind of has to call this.
He does call.
Oof.
You got revered.
Lot of history here, I assume. Maybe not just at the table. Rawr. This is actually a pretty brutal one. Weird hand, though. Weird hand.
Kitai crippled by that river call, left with fewer than 10 big blinds. While Johnny Lodden's stellar day 2 continues.
So in some ways, this is exactly what Kitai wants. A brick comes off, Lodden bets. But you can see the pain in Kitai's face because of, I think, the sizing of Lodden's bet. If Lodden moves him in, which is what Kitai would expect, I think he's going to snap call this. He takes a little bit of time because even though this was his plan and what he wanted to happen, he doesn't understand why Lodden is leaving him 8 blinds left, and that's a bad sign.
Right, and Kitai can't really fold after the way he's played the hand. He's played it for this specific situation to come up against this specific super aggro player in Johnny Lodden. It's just such a crappy spot because he can just feel being behind, but he knows that he's just too exploitable if he folds here.
Yeah, I mean, especially against Lodden, who sometimes is going to bet this much and leave that much behind with a bluff because he knows Kitai is aware of that.
So everybody out there, I know this is a really high-level hand. If you want to hear about 45 minutes on it, because this takes a lot of depth to get into, check out our podcast.
Yeah, we talk about it in super depth.
Hand of the Week on iTunes.